Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Med School Minutes podcast, where we discuss what it takes to attend and successfully complete a medical program. This show is brought to you by St. James School of Medicine. Here is your host, Kaushik Gua.
Welcome to another episode of Med School Minutes, where we talk about everything med school related with a focus on international students, specifically students from the Caribbean. As we are in March, this episode will be dedicated to talking about the residency match process and SOAP. Whether you're a medical student or just curious about the journey to becoming a practicing physician in the United States, this video will break down the essential steps. Residency is the process in which medical students eventually get a job as a practicing physician. The residency match process is a crucial step for medical students completing their education and transitioning into residency training, or basically the practical training that doctors need to get fully licensed. It's a system designed to pair graduating medical students with residency programs across the country. Here's how it works. First, the medical students apply to residency programs through the Electronic Residency Application Service, or ERAS. This process is the same for students who finished in the U.S. medical schools and for those who are considered international medical graduates, which Caribbean students are, irrespective of their nationality. All students will submit their applications, which include their medical school transcripts, letters of recommendations, personal statements, and various other required documents, which might vary from the applying institution, etc., etc. Once applications are submitted, residency programs review them and extend interview invitations to select candidates. These interviews are a crucial opportunity for both parties to assess the fit and compatibility. After the interview process concludes, both applicants and residency programs rank each other in order of preference. Medical students submit their rank lists through the National Residency Matching Program, or the NRMP, while programs submit their rank lists separately. Finally, on match day, medical students across the country eagerly await their fate. This is when the NRMP algorithm matches applicants with residency programs based on their rank list. This is typically the second week of March, but it varies slightly depending on the date. So let's talk about some numbers. In 2023, NRMP reported a 62.4% match rate among IMG applicants who submitted a certified rank order list according to the PGY main residency match. 67% for US IMGs and 59% for non-US IMGs. The match rate for international medical students increased by 10 to 12% during the past 7 years. But if you compare this to the 94% match rate for US medical school graduates, the current match rate for IMGs still has a lot of room for improvement. This year, in 2024, a total of 9,045 IMGs obtained first-year residency positions in accredited US GME programs, an increase of 7.8% from last year, and comprising more than 1/4 of all matched applicants. Of the IMGs matched, 3,181 are US citizens, a decrease of 175 compared to last year. The number of matched non-US citizen IMGs is 5,864, up 832 compared to 2023. Despite the record high applicant participation, the match rates for US citizens and non-US citizen IMGs remain steady, with less than 1 percentage point difference from last year of 67% and 58.5% respectively. SJSM alone matched 105 students into residency this year. We're still waiting on some post-match results, but even then 105 is the highest number of match residents for SJSM ever. Our students continue to make strides in the match, and the results show it. To match for residency, students must not only have great scores on the USMLE, but need a clear strategy when it comes to applying for residency. Networking, strong letters of recommendation, good interview preparation, good research on IMG-friendly residency programs are just some of the things that will make a huge difference in matching. Over the past 2 years, we've recorded several podcasts where we covered the best practices from our students who did match. I would strongly encourage you to check some of them out. However, not all students are successfully matched through the main match day process. This is where SOAP comes in. SOAP, or the Supplemental Offer and Acceptance Program, is a process designed to help unmatched applicants find residency positions that are still available after the main match. It's a fast-paced, intense process where applicants apply to unfilled programs and receive offers in rounds. You really have to work closely with your school. Moreover, this entire process lasts literally no more than 1 to 2 days. Throughout the SOAP, applicants have the opportunity to apply for unfilled programs, receive and consider offers, and make decisions quickly. It's a challenging process, but it offers a chance for unmatched applicants to secure a residency position. In 2023, there were a total of 40,375 positions offered in the match. 2,431 of them were filled through the SOAP. While the chances of matching in SOAP are not great, a good number of our students were successful in doing so this year. Now, if you haven't matched at all this year, it is crucial that you use the next 11 months wisely. We advise our students to take on a meaningful role in a medical or an educational institution, preferably some sort of a clinical exposure. Students who meaningfully use their time between matches are highly likely to match next year. But the year gap does not mean a year off. I'll give you a very clear example of this. St. James School of Medicine has for 8 years been running the USMLE counseling program. In this program, we hire our students who didn't match or didn't apply in time, but have finished the entire SJSM curriculum to become a USMLE counselor for our basic science students. For about 10 months, our counselors, aside from helping basic science students to be successful in their program, spend time working with our team on research, curriculum evaluation, and even more importantly, networking and application and interview preparation. As a result, in 8 years, 31 counselors have matched at 100% match rate the next year. Some of these folks had failures on USMLE or have had several unsuccessful matches. One student failed to match 4 times before coming to the USMLE counseling position and then subsequently matched. My point here is there is no excuse. If you failed to match this year, roll up your sleeves, come up with a plan, and use the next 11 months in the most meaningful way possible. And most importantly, network. With that said, I'd like to bring in a guest on today's show. Please welcome Dr. Pablo Sisiruca, an SJSM alumni, a newly matched resident, and soon-to-be former USMLE counselor. Pablo will tell us a little bit about what helped him match and what his words of wisdom will be for the next group of students who are going to appear for the match in 2025. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Sisiruca. Welcome to our show, Pablo. And before we even, say another word, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So just so our viewers know, today is match day. Can you kind of tell us what this week is and the logistics of this week so our viewers know exactly what you've been through this entire week?
Oh, yes. This match was being mixed with emotions, especially family, waiting to see, where you're going to end up. First day is kind of like, you matched and that's like a big weight off your shoulders. Right. But then Friday is like where? So, basically, is this your top choice or where in the list, right? Did they rank you? So I'm just really happy, that it has come to fruition. Okay. So a lot of hard work, but it paid off.
A lot of hard work. And can you kind of tell us about this ranking process? And a lot of our viewers are not familiar with that. So on Monday, obviously you submit your choices during the match process. You interview, you get interview calls. And just for the record, can you tell our viewers how many interviews you got?
I actually got 23 interviews.
Okay.
Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit about it. That almost sounds like too much. But I want to know what the personal implications of 23 interviews are. But before we get into that, so you after the interviews, you go for these visits or these interviews, you fly out. Some of them are over Zoom, some of them are in person, right? Yes. As a percentage, how many were in person, how many were over Zoom?
I think it was 50-50.
50-50,
yeah,
okay.
somewhere over Zoom, somewhere in person.
Okay.
Yeah, and some of them that you had the option, like they could offer like Zoom over, basically because they understand some people can't fly out.
Okay.
So they made, but not all the programs are made the same.
And as far as once you finish all your interviews are typically done around November, December?
Yes.
I know some interviews went through January as well. Not for you maybe, but for some other students. So pretty much after January, there seems to be a hard stop on interviews. No more interviews.
Yes.
And at that point, when do you go to the NRMP website and when do you actually fill out that, hey, these are my top choices? When does that happen?
So
the rank order list, as they call it.
Yeah, so basically, I don't remember off the top of my head the exact date, but there's a date that you have to go in and basically you put the programs and list of your top choice all the way to your least favorite, or if there's a program that you basically don't want to go, basically you don't rank them. So depending any program, basically it's a possibility that you can match into, right?
Okay.
At the end of the day, it's also the program, right? How far in the list, because they also have a list. So depending how top in the list that you are, basically you will match into that program.
So basically the way it sounds like, it's like you submit a choice list and then the hospital submits a choice list of candidates.
Correct.
I just heard from a program director, it's typically double the number of seats that they have. So if a program has 13 openings, the program director said that they typically rank 26 candidates. And then then the NRMP algorithm, there's no human interaction into this as far as my understanding goes.
That is correct.
Is that, Pablo ranked university program A in his top 3, and the university also ranked Pablo as well. There's a match, so he matches. And so how many programs can you rank?
You can rank as many programs as you want. There's actually, yes.
So if you applied for 100 programs, you can potentially rank 100 programs?
Yeah, you can potentially rank programs. Yeah, the only thing is that you pay a fee past, the 10 top list, but you can definitely rank as many programs as you want.
Okay. So how many programs did you rank?
I ranked basically all the programs because I definitely wanted, basically to have, as a backup option, in case, my top choice didn't choose me, I will still have somewhere to go.
Right. And how expensive does this come out to be? Like typical. So let me rephrase this. What for a student who's trying to get into residency next year, what recommendation would you give them to rank how many programs? Minimum.
Minimum, you should be ranking at least 10 programs.
At least 10 programs.
Yes. Based on the NRMP data, they say, if you rank 10 programs and you get definitely 10 interviews, right, you have a 95% of matching. So,
no way.
Yeah, so that's what the data has been showing in the past year. So, past the 10th, you're definitely going to match.
Okay.
So that was the recommendation by NRMP data.
That's amazing. And so now going back to the interview process, you said that some programs give you a choice. Do you think that there is an advantage of going in person versus doing something over Zoom from your personal experience?
That's an excellent question. I definitely believe in person is much better. Not only because you get to see the program face to face, you get to interact with the residents. It's not the same as you're in front of the computer screen,
right,
and you don't know what they might be thinking about you, or maybe how's the hospital going to be. So there's always. By going in person, you get to see not only the hospital that you're going to be working on. You're going to see the colleagues, your residents. So you have that ability. Maybe, if you have a family, you can also see, where you're going to end up living. So this was very important for me. That's why I always chose, if the program had like the option for in-person, I always chose that.
Right. And what about a program that has only Zoom? Did you do anything? Did you follow any tactics to make yourself stand out during the Zoom? Like, did you wear a special hat?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not a special hat. I just in every interview, Zoom or person, I just try to be myself. the recommendation is just dress well, but at the end of the day, you want to be yourself, right?
Okay.
You can't just, try to be somebody else. You got to be unique, genuine.
Okay.
And I think, that's what programs are looking for you, right?
Okay.
They're really not worried about, how you're dressed, but the personality. If you're, that's why it's called, I think, the match, right?
Okay.
If you match, with the mission of the hospital, and you also match, what you're trying to get from the hospital. So it's both ways.
Okay. So, based on your experience now with so many interviews this year, which you've knocked it out of the park, what's your advice for interviews? Did you have any technical interviews where they're asking you very technical stuff that you learned in basic sciences or even in your clinicals, or were they all behavioral? What is your take?
Yeah, so that's a great question. In my interviews, I wasn't asked anything clinical. It was actually about a situational, like behavioral questions.
Okay.
And most of the time, it was just basically personality, right? They were just asking, basically what you do for fun, the things that basically sometimes people think, these are cheesy questions, but they actually want to find out if you're able to be in a team, right, with the other people that are already residents. So if you're able to interact well with them. So that's where they're looking,
So I do know that this particular aspect has changed a little bit. When you talk to physicians of yesteryear, who are obviously in really, really high positions now, they always say that in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and even the 90s and early 2000s, there was a big focus on we want lone wolves. That was the term that they used, lone wolves. Whereas now, every time I talk to a program director, and from what you're saying, it seems like the mindset is more about, I don't want a lone wolf. I want a team, and I want the sum of the team members to be greater than the individuals.
That is correct.
And is that what you saw in your interviews as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I think, most of the questions, especially the behavioral, they were, geared towards, how can you, do this within a team, right? How well can you interact within a team? So most of the questions were testing you to see how well, you're able to interact with others, right? Because at the end of the day, you go into a residency program, you become a doctor, but the success is not only one person, it's made from different people. So you're going to work with social workers, residents, attendings. I think it has shifted, like you said. So now it's like more, we want a person that can do well with others.
Okay. Interesting. And, talking a little bit about the residency process, this is something that a lot of people don't understand or realize, is that obviously med school expenses are med school expenses, but residency, this is not cheap either, right? If you don't mind, could you tell us about how much you budgeted and what you kind of looked at overall from a budgeting standpoint on how you arranged your finances for this whole process? Because it couldn't have been cheap. You're traveling to 27 different destinations. You're probably staying a night, or do the programs actually provide you with a place to stay?
Some programs do provide basically, hotel accommodations and but most of the programs that I had on my list didn't have any of this. So it was a lot of expenses, right?
Okay.
So, I budgeted, more or less like in the, in the 10 grand, but it actually came out more because, I had to stay maybe a little bit. I wanted to see the area. Sometimes, when you go into a program in person, it's like a one-day thing. But you want to at least take another day, right, just to explore the area, explore where you're going to be. Just imagine yourself that you are already in that program.
Right.
And so, I usually, my expenses were a little bit higher because of that, because of food and all these type of things, transportation and so forth.
So from your experience, if you were to make a rule of thumb, for the expenses that they should budget for the match process and the interviewing process, what would you say? Per interview that they receive or they think that they would receive, what should be a rule of thumb budget? Would it be $1,000, $2,000, $10,000 per interview? What do you think?
I think, the rule of thumb will be around like $1,500, $2,000.
Per interview?
Per interview,
okay.
Yeah.
And even to apply to the NRMP, that's expensive too, right?
Yeah.
How much is that?
So the NRMP, basically you just pay a fee.
Right.
I think what you pay most is actually the ERS application whenever you're certifying. So you're actually paying more to be certified, right? And to basically submit all your transcript to ERS. But NRMP is just like a one-time fee. It's not really that expensive.
Okay. So from the period that you graduate and you're applying for matches to the period that before you get any interview calls, what expenditure would a student be looking at before any interview calls?
Before any interviews?
Yeah.
Wow, that's hard to say. I will say in a couple of, thousands.
But less than five, maybe?
Less than five.
Less than five,
yeah,
okay.
Less than five.
So I think it sounds like a safe bet would be 5,000 for the match process.
Yes.
Or the application process of the match, and then another 1,500, give or take, per interview that they might have
That's
received.
correct. Yeah, and that also, will vary.
Expensive.
Yeah, it's very expensive, and that will vary basically, depending if you want to, go because the matching process, you want to look the best, right? So you want to, have the best picture. You want to, basically have the best personal statement. Maybe you want to hire a company to help you, with your personal statement. Whatever.
Well, we don't recommend that. We help. With that.
Exactly.
So we want our students to come to us.
Yes.
Which I wish they would use this a little bit more. It's just a matter of giving us a call, giving the office a call, giving our clinical department a call. Hey, I'm writing this personal statement. Can you review it?
Yeah. At the end of the day, you want somebody else to review your personal statement. You see how it sounds. Sometimes when we're writing personal statements, right? Sometimes we think it's the best, but maybe another person that's actually reading it thinking it's missing a couple of things. And I remember revising this, right? It took me, a couple of months to actually get to my final paper.
Right.
So
that's awesome. So now going back, this was, I know we talked about this and you said that this was not the first time you applied for match. You've attempted this before. Obviously, there were some extenuating circumstances because of which you couldn't follow through with the match process. I just want to know what your experience is like as far as managing the stress. So let's talk about the stress level with match, generally speaking. I can't even imagine what that's like. So I'm not a physician, but the way I envision the match process is essentially, it's like applying for a job, but you're only allowed the application for a certain time frame and the results are given out on one day. Would that be a fair characterization for somebody who's not a physician, who doesn't understand
I think so, but I think also the stress level is too high, especially, that, you have certain deadlines, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to wait until match day to know your results. You actually, you're working on different things, right? To improve, who you are, especially, if you've been, through different cycles of the residency process, right? And you're thinking, well, how can I do this better?
Right.
How can I do this? And then the stress level comes, at the match week. That's when everything's going to happen. You're going to, either match or not match. It's, it's filled with emotions.
Right. So since you've been through this process before, do you think your stress levels get progressively higher? Or do you think because you went through this process once before, you were more experienced and you had better stress management tools available to you?
Yeah, so I believe I had better stress management, right?
Wow, okay.
Basically after going, because I had more experience. I learned from my mistakes. I learned, what I needed to do to become better, a better basically applicant, to stand out.
Right.
I think the only stress out was basically match week, right? I think everyone has this, but going through the process again, you understand what you need to do, right? It's not like, your first time and you don't know, okay, what should I do? Personal statement, all all the strategies, you already have them. So I think it did help.
It helped, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So also, I know you're a dad. You're obviously a husband. And I've always been a big advocate for having a emotional support system, which obviously families are great for. However, when it comes to studying, and I advise my students this all the time, that I think families are a detriment to the studying process, because when you're studying medicine, you're looking at 8 to 10 hours nonstop. You don't want distractions. And that's why I always advise students who always say, oh, I'm going to do so much better at home. I say, no, you're not, because moms and dads, with all due respect to them, they don't understand this. If you're living with them, if you're living with husbands and wives and they're not physicians, they're not understanding the stresses that you're going through. They'll be like, oh, hey, Pablo, can you run to the grocery store and get me this? Or, hey, Dad, can you take me to the park? These are distractions, very good distractions, but they are distractions nonetheless. So when it comes to studying and step one studying, I always say, you know what? Family is secondary at this point. In your situation with the match process, what do you think? Did you think the families really was a big benefit? Because the amount of work that goes, and I've seen so many students go through the match process, it's not an easy process. First, let's break down the time commitment that's required to actually fill in the application and then prepare for the interviews on a daily basis. So if you got 23 interviews, as you said, how much time did it take for you to prepare for each interview?
I think, with me, since coming, past 2 cycles, I had more experience. I think, what took me the most was, prepare myself into, the strategy of how would I present myself to the programs. Okay. I think at the end of the day, right, some of these programs, they do ask similar questions, right? And you got to be genuine. You can't just, copy a certain script, right? You got to be genuine. And I think for me, what helped me the most was, I'm going to be genuine every single interview. I'm going to try to answer basically honestly. Okay. And I also did look basically at, different residency programs that actually had a couple of example interview questions. So I did practice those. And I became better, right? I got friends to listen to me because this is very important. You gotta practice. So, practice makes perfect. Right. And I believe, that helped me the most.
Right. And so even the application, so a lot of students fill out the application while they're studying. How much time does the application and researching the programs and applying to the programs take? Is that a huge time commitment, or is it not at all? It's 10 minutes.
No, it takes time. It takes time depending, if you definitely, what program are you interested in, right? You got to research. Sometimes, in the ERAS, for those that don't know, you only get a little detail of the program. You get, who the program directors are, the email, the contact information, but, you don't know the mission of the hospital. You don't know, what they're about. So, it's up to you to go there and do your own research, right? And this is going to take time. So you got to balance out, while you're studying, while you're taking care of family, here and there. And this was, kind of the biggest challenge for me, right? As a parent, right? Because I had, my family had to support. Right. I also was basically studying, and then I also had to have my own time to research programs. So, but I think at the end of the day, it worked out.
Right. It worked out. And so obviously I know you have a very young son, and they're children. They need a lot of attention, and not just from mom. They need attention from dad too. So how did you manage that? This aspect of playing multiple roles. I know we all play multiple roles, but it seems 23 interviews is not normal. It is a very good abnormal to be at. This is remarkable. And preparing for all those interviews and all that travel, I mean, kudos to your wife. You better be really nice to her moving forward, because I know how much you traveled, and I know how Chicago in theory is your base, but it really wasn't, because you were traveling so much. And right through the process, we were colleagues. You were working as a counselor. So I know exactly what you went through, but how did you manage that? Were there any specific strategies that you were using? Was it just buying your wife flowers every time you were here? How did that work out?
It was stressful at times. I kind of felt bad sometimes, with my son, because I had to sacrifice time, to actually, fly out. Right. But at the end of the day, before that, you got to be honest with your family, right? They have to believe, right, in what you're doing, right? It's going to make a better outcome,
Right,
at the end of the day. So, I talked to my family. I was really honest, and I told them, listen, I got to do this.
Right.
It's going to take, some time, off from, how we spend together, right? There's going to be days I'm not going to be there. So I think that honesty level really helped.
Okay.
And, my son actually, he understood. He was always happy. Oh, where are you going next? Where are you traveling? So he kind of like took it kind of like a game.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we had kind of like a map, and we will like place like little dots.
That's
amazing. I will travel this place, place, and then he will ask me, when I will come back, how was it? How was it? So I think it's It came out perfect. It came out perfect.
And what was the reaction when you told them that you matched in your top choice?
Oh yeah, they were. My wife, my son. They're extremely happy.
Right.
They were. Oh my God, I cannot express, the emotions that they're going through, right? Yeah, and now that we have a place.
No more traveling like this anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And where were you situated before that? I know you came to Chicago essentially for the counselor position. Before that, you were somewhere else.
Yeah, so I was actually in Miami, Florida.
Wow.
Yes, and I was doing like an externship.
Okay.
I was trying to, improve my chances since I went to this cycle.
And boy, did you. 23 interviews. That's amazing. I want to talk a little bit about this position that you came in for, the counselor position. This was a position that we started, St. James started. This is unique. No other Caribbeans. Not that I know of. I don't know. You've been our student for a while, so you know probably more. But as far as my research goes, no other Caribbean school even does anything close to this. Forget about Caribbean school. No American school does this as well. And we've been very pivotal, and we're very proud of this. You guys are the 7th group that have gone through our program, this counselor program, and you've matched. And typically, the counselors we take are students who've had more than one attempt in the match. We don't take students who just graduated. I want to hear a little more about your take on the counselor position. You came to us. You wanted to be a counselor. Did that position really help in improving your resume? What does that job really entail and things like that? So can you let's start by how would you describe the counselor position?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So the counselor position is basically helping, your fellow students, right? Okay. You were in their shoes at a given point, right? You were in basic sciences. So you get to help them out. You get to tutor them, guide them in the right direction. Right. And I think it's very important. I've always believed you're in the principle of service. Right. And I think that's why I chose also this position because, what a better way of helping people that are struggling, that understand, you might be thinking about, you have challenges while you're studying for your steps.
Right.
But you're going to have other challenges, right? So I get to basically guide them and tell them that, this is not the end, right? You get to support them and be their advocate. The same way as a patient, but you have you have that role. And, I think it impacted a lot of my students.
Right. So the counselor position, essentially for our viewers who don't know what it is, it's essentially you have private tuitions at your beck and call. There's no extra charge for it for students. They can come in. If they're struggling with something and they cannot get the professor or they're still having difficulty after meeting the professor, that's when they can reach out to you.
That's correct.
I have to ask this. I always ask this when I meet people in different professions. What is the funniest experience you had as a counselor with the student? And what is the most touching experience you've had as a counselor?
I think the funniest one, as you make your meetings and you meet students, from all religions, different ways of life. I had this student, basically going in pajamas, basically. Okay. I wasn't expecting that, basically you think, you're going to be having a session, very professional, but, sometimes they just, want to be relaxed. So, I had this student, I remember, he was in pajamas and in the background you have all these toys and everything. So it was kind of like very funny, just, I wasn't expecting that.
What kind of toys? Just to everyone to clarify.
So he has some Transformer and anime toys.
I don't know. My mind, it went to the gutter. So I'm not even going to. I was like, what kind of toys is he just displaying out there? Okay. But that's interesting. Okay, a grown person maybe he's a collector.
Yeah.
And what's the most touching story?
I think the most touching was when you see that student that's been basically, time and time again has not passed, the basically MBMEs, the step one, and you tutor them, you guide them for a couple of months. And, I've had the privilege and, the pleasure of, these students writing to me and telling me, thank you, I passed the step one. And it's not only one, I've had 5 or 6 that passed the step one, just months. And basically 15 that actually passed the MBME. So I had a lot of impact. And, just seeing those letters, basically it goes beyond, right? It's like a feeling that you can't describe.
Right. That's awesome. That's truly amazing. I mean, and just so our viewers know, since Pablo has matched and, reluctantly we have to let him go. So we do have 3 counselor positions open this year. We want applications. It's a great working environment. Can you talk a little bit about the working environment? Might as well make this an advertisement for the counseling position. But did you think the counselor position helped you in your application process?
Yeah, it definitely did. Okay. It definitely did. I actually, I believe, you get transformed basically while you're doing this, as you help others and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to help you throughout the process as well. So, I got transformed. I saw a different outlook of what I needed to do. And basically, you get help, with your own, basically personal statement. As you're helping others, you get to find new ideas. Maybe I should do this.
Epiphanies.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And especially, the counselor position, prior to interview season, we actually have basically interview, basically practice. So, we have other students that would like to practice interview skills. Okay. And I think this helped tremendously because you get to listen in, right? Kind of like you were like a program director, right? And you get to listen in how others respond to those questions. That actually, tremendously helped me as well.
Well, but you did get 23 interviews. And before we had our mock interview sessions with all our students, I think you already completed quite a few interviews, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So you had a lot of experience to, tell students what to expect. I mean, I think the biggest mistake that I've seen doing these mock interviews, students come in expecting technical questions. And then when you ask them, what's your hobby? They're scrounging around trying to figure out, oh my God, I didn't even think about hobbies. I mean, what do I tell them? And I've had students come and tell me my hobby is sleeping. I'm like, whoa, dude, don't please. No, you're going to be working 80 hours, up to 80 hours as a resident. Don't tell a program director that your hobby is sleeping.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to encourage that kind of a hobby.
Yeah. And I think, as cheesy as this question might be, this was one of the most common questions that every program did ask because they want to connect. Even, I've heard stories that program directors connect with the applicant if they share the same hobby, right? So you can't just, make up a hobby because they will get you, right? So just try to be honest, right? If your hobby is, playing tennis, at least, you got to know the famous players. Right. Something that you can have a conversation, right?
That shows interest.
That shows interest, right? Yeah. And you can connect with them.
Okay. And what about mentioning do you think the kind of hobby makes any difference? Because this is very interesting because I spent nearly a decade in consulting. And when we were recruiting, we were always told, if a candidate reaches your desk, it means that technically they're sound. You don't have to worry about the technical aspect. We've tested him. We've questioned him and grilled him with his qualifications. Don't worry about that. We just need you to know whether you can tolerate this person working, say, pulling an all-nighter with this person. Can you handle that? Because in consulting you travel a lot. When you travel, if your flight gets canceled and you have an 8-hour layover and you're stuck at the airport, are you okay being stuck in the airport for 8 hours? So it makes sense that program directors are also looking at it the same way, that they want somebody they can like and they find interesting. So even in consulting, what are your hobbies was a very, very important question. It's very interesting and surprising to see that program directors are kind of using the same tactics. But do you think that there's a hobby that's better or worse than anything than other hobbies? Do you think if you say that, hey, you know what, I don't know, dissecting insects is a great hobby, and is that going to make things a little easier for a surgeon? I'm just making stuff up. But do you think from your experience after doing so many interviews, there's a better hobby than others or not?
That's a great question. I think at the end of the day, there's no best hobby.
Okay.
One of the most important things that if you understand what type of skill are you trying to portray, because this is actually not a question about the hobby, but the type of hobby, like you're saying, and what skill, right, are you going to bring? So maybe like you were talking, like, dissecting, maybe you're a curious person.
Right.
And sometimes, they're looking for this type of person that's very curious, right? My hobby is tennis. So, I work great in a team, right?
Okay.
So, they will ask me, how will you, what's your favorite player? Or have you played with, doubles, singles?
I see.
So that's how, they try to just find out a little bit more about you, right? So...
That's interesting. So I will say this, though. One of our counselors in previous groups had this conversation with the program director, and he obviously matched into the program. And this is a very bizarre hobby. His hobby was blacksmithing. Like, he would actually make metal stuff. And when the program director heard this, he was like, oh, this is crazy. I've never met anybody whose hobby is being a blacksmith. Because mine is stew, and he's like, I make swords, like actual swords as a hobby. And I was talking to this particular student, and he said that, the program director after a session said that, hey, why don't you come over? And they built several things together, and this program director's garage is basically a regular forge. Like, he has burners and stuff. So to your point, I think, And the only reason he was invited, this was before he even matched. They just say, hey, why don't you come over? And he was interested in the techniques that he knows, because it's such a unique hobby. And I was like, man, that's amazing. So to your point, and on the flip side, I also know students who've lied about their hobbies and got caught in the lie. And obviously, like, for example, someone said gardening. And then the program director asked, okay, what's your favorite plant? They didn't have a plant in mind that's a favorite plant. Again, to your point, if your hobby is gardening and you cannot name a plant, that's a problem. Or if you're getting something completely basic wrong, where, you're calling a succulent something else, things that are relatively common knowledge, I think that's really terrible. But talk to me about the office environment here a little bit. What was your take on it? I mean, we've had mixed reviews on our office environment. I mean, I will say this, that our office environment is very laid back, and it is, we want students and everybody to come out of their shell. And at least this is what we try to do is, we don't want people to be fearful, because fear is never a good thing. People react differently. People have different reactions to fear, and they're never their best. So we don't, in our office at least, we definitely don't bark orders. We try to work with people's schedules. We understand this is a job. There are bigger things that people, the job is a means to an end. And in most cases, the way we look at things, the end is family. And so that's what we want to portray. I want your take as an outsider. I wouldn't call it an outsider, who came in for a year into our office. What was your feeling? Did you feel welcomed? Did you think that, wow, this is a little too much, this is really informal? What was your take on the thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I came to this position, what I loved the most was the people, right? Okay. Everybody here is very helpful. They want you to succeed, yes. Right? They want, at the end of the day, your goal is to match, but you're also helping other students. Right. I just felt welcomed, right? And I just enjoyed, the environment. I came, every day when I woke up, I wanted to, come to work.
Awesome.
I definitely enjoyed, every minute of it. And I think at the end of the day, I also impacted other people. I helped
Absolutely.
them. And I learned, right? Because you're also learning as you go through. And the funny thing is, you will lose the fear, right? If you're a person, fear is normal, right? But when you come to this position, you will definitely shed that fear off.
Well, that's good. Yeah. That's what we want. Because if you're fearful, and this is a philosophy of our as a school, this is how we run our school, is that you shouldn't be fearful of failing. Failing is a part of learning. It's a part of the journey. Like, if you want to get somewhere, you need to take steps to getting that and getting over that fear, whatever that is. Writing not a good personal statement. Your first personal statement is never going to be good.
Yes.
And we want people to get over that embarrassment, get over that fear, and ask for help when they need it. I think that is the key. And not just in medicine, but even in our work. After today's match results, we are officially the 5th largest Caribbean school right now. With the number of students that we're matching into the program. It's nearly 100 students. There are almost no other schools other than the big 4 that have more matches than we do. But what we want is we want our students to, and I think that we've opened up our lines of communication with our students much better than we've done in the past, largely because of our counselors. And we really want our students to not be fearful, because that's something that I always feel that they are afraid of something or the other. Like, I'm not going to be the best candidate. That's, with all due respect, that's not your decision. It's the program director's decision. If they've called you for an interview, you're pretty darn good to begin with.
Yeah.
No one's giving out, no one's doing charity, or no one's giving a handout.
Yes.
No one's interested in giving you. They will only accept you if you're the best candidate. So my personal statement isn't good, and I'm too afraid to ask for help. I don't want to apply for surgery because what if I fail? These are things that these are a part of the process. This is not failure, but these temperaments is something that we, at least from our management style, we want to exemplify that this is not how people should lead their life. Making a decision from a position of fear is never a good decision.
That is correct.
And I hope that the minimum takeaway for you after being with us for a year is that if you fail, or if there is a distinct possibility of you failing, that should not be the reason why you don't attempt something. Whether it's a fellowship, whether it's a risky procedure, whatever that may be. Because in a lot of situations, you'll see even a smaller percentage of success, as long as there is a probability of success, makes the whole journey worthwhile. And I can tell you that because I've been an entrepreneur for a very long time, and I failed dramatically.
Yes.
But at the same time, still standing. And, as you pointed out, with time, with the more attempts that you've taken for this match, you've gotten better at handling stress.
Yes.
And handling things. And I think that's the growth
yes.
that you have.
Yeah, you're growing in character. And I believe, when you start something and you don't know if it's going to succeed or not, that it's going to value, what type of character. Right. You're your own warrior. You got to, go out there. And the other thing that you definitely say, you got to be open for change, right? You don't have all the keys at the moment.
Right.
There's going to be people there that could definitely help you.
Right.
And I was always open, for change. I believe, this was one of the turning points, from past matches to how I match and how I got these interviews, because I said to myself, I need help and I'm going to get it. And, and people are going to go out of their way to help me. And that's this way. So I shed the fear and this, in turn, the environment helped me succeed.
That's awesome. My final question to you is, through the match process, you must have met or reached out to several alumni and other St. James students. What has been your experience with that? Like, has it been positive? Has it been great? Are students really, former St. James students, are they trying to help you out? Do program directors know about St. James? What's been your experience?
Yeah, exactly. That's an excellent question. So yes, I think it really helped because, you have that connection, right? They went to the same school as you. They understand what you're battling, what your opposition, your challenges are, and they go out of their way to help you, to tell you. Maybe they might share their phone numbers. They might tell you if you have questions. And I believe, as St. James students get placed in all these different residency programs, and like you said before, we have a 95% match rate. It does tell how well, our students are doing, right? And program directors do I think, you have kind of like a better chance of getting an interview because St. James is a St. James student. So I did believe basically St. James students, our residents now, did go out of their way to help me basically and, to maybe, speak, good on behalf of the program directors and so forth.
Awesome.
So.
Awesome. Well, I mean, congratulations. And along your journey, we hope that you will be one of those alumni who are going to see St. James students and be like, you know what? We need that student. And keep paying it forward, because that's what it's all about. That's how St. James has become one of the biggest Caribbean schools and the most successful. And we really, really, like, our success is your success. And I also want to point out something that you said earlier, that beyond your immediate family, nobody wants you more successful than me and everybody else in this office.
Yes.
Because we see the difference and the impact that our alumnus has made. We've seen how these students have climbed up the various career ladders that they've chosen to follow, and where they are today, and how they're influencing the medical community today, and how they're positively influencing the results of our school today. A lot of the matches that we're getting today, our match percentages are growing dramatically, and the reason we're doing so well is because of alumni who are opening doors for our students. And that is so heartwarming and so advantageous. And that's why I keep telling our incoming students and the current students who are in the program, get out of this bubble that you're in. Go out and talk to our management office. Talk to us. Tell us that, hey, these are the programs I'm interested in. We will make the introductions to former alumni who have some sort of association with the program. And that just opens so many doors.
Yeah.
But Pablo, or Dr. Sisiruca, as I should say now, congratulations. And we're just so incredibly proud of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And, I hope, the St. James mission, to, help the students succeed, basically continues. And I think, that's what it's all about. It's a great school. And I'm happy to be an alumni.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning into our show. We hope you enjoyed another episode of Med School Minutes. If you like our content, please follow us and receive notification when a new show is posted. This podcast is brought to you by St. James School of Medicine. For a video version of this podcast, please check us out on sjsm.org/video.